right, movie magic time. Alrighty guys, so you can see we kind of got the engine assembly going. We got the main accessory bracket on. If you saw on our Instagram, we talked about how we cleaned up the castings. We knocked all the flashing off that you can see. If you look over here, some of the parts we got done. Cleaned up the castings, took all the flashing off. Some of the stuff I wanted to leave, like I thought it was pretty cool with the markings on it that say Volkswagen in Germany and stuff. Some of that stuff I wanted to leave, but other stuff like on the valve cover, if you guys saw on the Instagram, it just had a bunch of casting flash and marks, so we just took it all off. It just makes it look cleaner, smoother. I kind of like the idea of taking OEM factory stuff and just making it a little better. So that's what we did. So now we're gonna start assembling. Kind of got all the bolts laid out. We got the stuff for our timing set, our S&P mount that has to go in, our oil cooler and filter housing, oil pan obviously, and then the rest of the knickknacks for our cooling, the coolant line around the back of the block, and then outlets, flanges, and of course our water pump. So we're just gonna be going through and kind of bolting this thing together, and then yeah, we prep the pan. I like to use brake clean and a little bit of emery cloth. Just a little abrasive cloth. You can get it at Napa, Craig & O'Reilly's. It comes in a roll, but it's good for prepping surfaces. So the pans on these TDI motors, it's just a machined surface. You can see it's actually Blanchard ground. That's why it's got that crisscross pattern in it. But it's a flat surface. So it doesn't take a cork gasket or anything like that. We're just gonna use some of this gasket maker. I use this, whoops, if I can get it unstuck. It's made by Permatex, it's called The Right Stuff. It's the best. Had great luck with it, virtually no leaks. So yeah. So all we're gonna do is we're gonna run a bead on the pan, and we're gonna make sure we go around all the bolt holes, and then we're just gonna cinch it up to the pan and torque it up. Now guys, because this is two machine services, you don't need a massive amount of this stuff. It doesn't look like a lot, but you're probably gonna see some of it squish out the sides. Alrighty guys, so once we have the right stuff on there, the RTV silicone, it's time for the pan. Guys, I know these are kind of old, but I dig them, these speed wrenches. It's kind of like old-timey race car stuff, but for doing pans and valve covers when you don't want to have something maybe as heavy or clunky like electric impact, these are pretty cool. You can send bolts home pretty quick with it. All right guys, so you know how to put in bolts. We're just gonna get the rest of the pan cinched up and torqued to spec, and then when we come back, we'll start working on the oil cooler, and then we'll get onto the water or coolant side of things. So next up, mounting the oil filter housing and cooler. This surface, no need for gasket sealer, so that's nice. We're just gonna reuse the gasket that came with it. It's just a simple metal shim gasket. It's got the raised surface all around the pressurized ports. Wasn't leaking before. We're gonna toss it in. 4 easy bolts, easy to get to. And when we looked at the motor before, it wasn't leaking, so we're just gonna reuse it. Super simple. Gasket on, tighten the 4 bolts. Not like you guys haven't seen this before, so we'll get this mounted up and then we're gonna jump ahead. Ooh, almost forgot. Before you put the oil pump housing on, your coolant line, it's gotta go on first. It's just got an O-ring, okay? And it's just basically held in by the shape of it. There's a bolt at the back of the block, and that's what's gonna hold it in. There it goes, it's seated. So we're gonna throw a bolt in that, and then next step, let's see, we got that. Oh, next step, we're gonna start putting on the water pump and the timing set, but we'll get this on for you guys, and then when we come back, we'll get into all this goodness up here. Okay, so my cameraman, Maxwell Smart, was kind enough to help me get some stuff done real quick so we can move this along. So pan bolts are cinched up, valve covers on, and the coolant return flange, the outlet at the back of the head. Max snugged this up for me as well. You guys will notice with this RTV or Permatex, the right stuff, some people will wipe it when it squishes out. I like to leave it, and it's much easier to trim with a razor after. If you try to wipe it, it smears, and then you got to use something that's solvent based to get it up, like acetone. So you don't wipe the paint off the block and stuff. We're just gonna wait till that dries, trim it with a razor. Next, of course, since we're this far into it, we're gonna put a new thermostat housing in, or excuse me, a new thermostat. So just this little setup, this side goes in towards the block. 2 bolts, we're just gonna cinch it up real quick, and then we're gonna move on to the front of the motor. Alrighty guys, so for today, the last part of the cooling system we gotta mess with is right here, our water pump. So we're gonna get this guy bolted in. Again, no gasket, it's just got an O-ring seal, which is nice. There's very few gaskets on this motor, which makes it pretty cool. From earlier on in our video series on this car, we talked about the back of the timing cover. You can see there's still a little gold Sharpie right here, but this is about what I had to remove. Now, if I lay it out like this, you'll see the S&P mount is gonna fit right in there like that. And once we get bolted, or get this all bolted up, you're gonna see exactly why it had to be trimmed out like that. So for now, we'll get the water pump in, and then we're gonna start, we'll go with the back cover, we'll get the mount on, and then we'll start getting all our timing components on, the tensioner, excuse me, the idler, the guides, and then of course our cam gear and our injection pump gear. Alrighty, so now we're down to the timing set. We got a new tensioner. There's a whole technique or a process to putting this under the correct tension. Automatic transmission versus manual transmission has a different tensioner. So if you're doing this swap and you're going with an auto, look into that. Now that we got the water pump on the motor, we're gonna put on our back cover, we'll put in our S&P mounts, and then we'll start with the timing set. All right, so learn something new. Back cover's gotta go on first. You can see there's like these tabs on the water pump, these reliefs. These little bosses under here go under the water pump. So note to self, if you're doing a TDI swap, first thing it's gotta go on is the back cover. Alrighty guys, so here's our timing components. Let me grab our timing belt. So we got our tensioner. I'll show you how that locks into the timing gear rear cover. You got an idler, and these, I guess we'll call them guides. They help put tension on some of the other belts. So I guess all we're gonna do now is just start putting it together. We'll go over the basic stuff first. We'll get these guys in. So you'll see there's 2 different rollers. One's got this boss on the back of it, one doesn't. Now on the engine, I'll drag it over. So on the engine, you've got this boss up here on the main accessory bracket. So this idler right here, this guy goes on that stud. Put a nut on there, come back and tighten that in a second. This roller mounts up here on this boss, just with the bolt. Like I said, we'll come back through according to the manual and snug everything up to spec. But for now, we're just gonna get it all bolted on. Okay, so we got our roller guides in here, and we're looking good. All right, next, let's put on the other idler pulley. This one goes down here just below the water pump, and I'll show you guys. I'm kind of standing, putting you guys in the shadow. You'll see there's a big relief in the rear timing cover for this idler. Okay, so next let's put on our timing gears, and we'll cinch up and install the tensioner last. So if you'll remember, on the back of the motor, I'll flip it for my cameraman. Woo. Can I do this without wrecking anything? There we go. We still got our cam locked out with our tool. So our cam's been locked in place. Our pump is still pinned in the front. So now we're gonna put those gears back on so we can get the tensioner on and actually take these off and unload the whole thing. If you'll remember too, cam gear doesn't have a key. Don't be deceived by the key that's up here. There is no key on the cam gear, it's just tapered. That's why it's gotta be locked out. Obviously, go with the taper. This is the bolt. I think the manual says torque it to something like 40 Newton meters. I'll go back and look, and like I said, we're gonna torque and cinch everything up. All right, next is the cam gear. Now you'll notice on the cam gear, there's slots. Now from the research I've done, this is so you can make adjustments in the pump timing. So if you'll remember, we got our pump pinned out. We took the handle off the pump so it can stay pinned. And now we're just gonna put the cam gear on. Alrighty, so next we've got our tensioner. Now this tab is important. On the rear timing cover, there's a small rectangle and it's reinforced with metal on the back of the timing cover, just below the cam gear. And the reason I'm pointing that out is this tab has to lock into that relief in the back of the rear cover. I've read online, sometimes it can be a little tricky. The tab can be slightly off, but we're gonna try our best right now. There we go. Now, we obviously don't have the timing belt on. I'm gonna throw on the nut just to hold this thing on. So when we adjust the tension on the timing belt, what we're looking for is, if I can get it to go, maybe I'll come around this side so you can see. There's a locating tab. And as you tighten this and turn it, these two marks are gonna line up. And when those two marks line up, you know you have the correct amount of tension. So we'll get the belt on right now. Okay, so if you saw us struggling a little bit with getting the tensioner tension and the timing belt on, each tooth matters, guys. So once we took all the slack out of it, we were able to get it on. Also, there's a specific tool for tensioning the tensioner. However, we didn't have it, so we improvised. We used snap ring pliers to twist this around so you can see it got a little chewed up. But right under here, here's what we're looking for. I'll get my fat fingers out of the way and get a pointer. What we're looking for is, where am I? I lost my, oh, right here. We're looking for that slot right there to line up with that bump. So we got this all tensioned. It's good to go. Yeah, and we'll just keep plowing ahead tomorrow. So now that we got the timing set all in and the water pump and the backside of the cooling system, we'll be adding the rest of the accessories to it and buttoning up the front end, putting in the clutch, and then yeah, this thing should be at least back inside the engine bay pretty soon.